The email hit Jake Sullivan's inbox like a digital sledgehammer, shattering the quiet hum of his morning coffee ritual in his cramped Milwaukee apartment. Subject: Leadership Transition Update. No greeting, no pleasantries, just a cold, corporate missive from the CEO of Horizon Dynamics, Victor Grayson, requesting Jake's presence at a confidential lunch at the Copper Kettle, a swanky downtown steakhouse where deals were sealed and careers were quietly buried. Jake, a 42-year-old IT wizard who'd spent 12 years turning Horizon's tech division from a creaking relic into a humming powerhouse, knew exactly what this meant. He'd seen the signs for months: the unexplained server pings from the executive suite, the sudden arrival of a smug consultant named Chad who asked too many questions, and the way his name vanished from the company's glossy quarterly newsletter. Jake wasn't just being sidelined, he was being erased. But what Victor and his cronies didn't know was that Jake had a plan, a secret weapon coded deep in the company's digital heart, and a fire in his gut that no corporate betrayal could extinguish. This wasn't just a job to Jake, it was his legacy, and he'd be damned if he let some silver spoon nephew steal it. 12 years ago, Jake had wandered into Milwaukee with a duffel bag and a broken heart. He'd followed his ex-wife, Sarah, to the city for her law school dreams, only to watch their marriage implode when she traded him for a high-flying attorney with a corner office. The divorce left Jake reeling, a man untethered, taking a temp gig at Horizon Dynamics to pay the bills. Back then, Horizon was a mid-sized manufacturing firm churning out precision parts for aerospace clients, running on servers so old they groaned like his grandpa's Buick. Jake started as a one-man IT crew, troubleshooting printers and coaxing ancient desktops into compliance. But he saw potential where others saw chaos. Over a decade, he built a 30-person tech empire that kept 4 factories humming 24/7, from Milwaukee to Cleveland. He didn't just fix systems, she revolutionized them. His brainchild, Nexus Flow, was a custom software that synchronized production lines with surgical precision, slashing downtime and boosting output by 30%. It was the kind of thing that made Horizon's majority owner, Margaret Hensley, send him handwritten thank you notes until she didn't. Jake's office, a glass-walled corner of the 3rd floor, was his command center. Monitors glowed with real-time data, and his team, loyal, scrappy, and caffeinated, called him the maestro for his ability to orchestrate tech miracles. There was Lisa, his sharp-witted deputy who could debug code faster than she could down an espresso. Raj, the network guru who once rerouted an entire factory's data flow during a blizzard. And Mia, the rookie who'd learned more from Jake in 6 months than from 4 years at MIT. Together, they'd weathered crises that would have crippled lesser teams. When a ransomware attack locked Horizon's systems in 2020, Jake worked 72 hours straight, rebuilding the network from backups he'd insisted on keeping despite budget cuts. During the Great Lakes power outage of 2022, his failover protocols kept production online while competitors scrambled. Nexus Flow wasn't just software, it was Horizon's heartbeat, and Jake was its creator. But trouble brewed in the C-suite. Victor Grayson, the CEO with a smile as polished as his Rolex, had always been more politician than leader. He'd nod at Jake's briefings, toss out vague praise, then pivot to golf metaphors about driving the ball forward. Jake didn't trust him, especially after September, when a consultant named Chad showed up unannounced, poking through Jake's servers like a kid flipping through a comic book. Chad, with his gelled hair and jargon-heavy emails, was supposedly optimizing workflows, but Jake caught him downloading Nexus Flow's source code. Then came the restricted access to board minutes, the canceled one-on-ones with Victor, and the whispers about Margaret's nephew, Ethan Hensley. A 20-something Stanford dropout, with a tech blog and zero real-world experience. By November, Jake's server logs showed unauthorized access attempts from an IP tied to the executive floor. Ethan, it seemed, was getting a crash course in Jake's systems using Jake's own documentation. The lunch at the Copper Kettle confirmed his suspicions. Victor, flanked by a nervous HR rep named Diane, slid a manila envelope across the table. Jake, "You've done great things," Victor said, his voice dripping with rehearsed sincerity. "But we're looking for fresh perspectives. Ethan's got big ideas, and we think he's the future." Jake's fork froze mid-bite. Ethan, the nephew who once crashed a company picnic with a drone show that set a picnic table on fire, was replacing him. The envelope held an NDA and a severance package as 6 months' pay if he kept quiet and left in 2 weeks. 2 weeks! Jake had planned for a 6-month transition to train his successor, not a sprint to the exit. He signed the NDA, mostly to see how far this charade would go, but noticed his admin credentials were downgraded before he'd even left the restaurant. His name was already scrubbed from the company.org chart. Back at his apartment, Jake poured a whiskey and opened his laptop. He wasn't daunted by a long shot. Nexus Flow wasn't just Horizon's lifeline. It was his creation, predating his employment. He'd developed its core algorithms years ago, tinkering in his garage while Sarah studied for her bar exam. An email chain from 2013, buried in his personal archive, showed Victor acknowledging Nexus Flow as Jake's licensed property, though no formal contract was ever signed. Sloppy, Jake thought, but useful. He'd also kept an off-site server with the original code, a precaution born of paranoia and experience. If Horizon thought they could hand Ethan the keys to his kingdom, they were about to learn a lesson in intellectual property. The next day, Jake walked into Horizon like a man on a mission. His team sensed the shift. Lisa raised an eyebrow. Raj muttered about corporate nonsense, and Mia asked if he was okay. Jake grinned. "Never better. Let's make sure everything's airtight before I go." He didn't tell them about the lunch, but Lisa, ever perceptive, cornered him later. "They're screwing you, aren't they?" she whispered. Jake shrugged. "They're trying, but I've got a few tricks left." He spent the next week updating Nexus Flow's backend, embedding a license key set to expire 8 days after his departure. It was a digital deadman's switch without a new agreement. The software would lock, and Horizon's production lines would grind to a halt. He also filed provisional patents for Nexus Flow's key components, ensuring his legal claim was ironclad. Meanwhile, the rumor mill churned. Lisa overheard Victor and Margaret discussing a buyout by Apex Innovations, a tech conglomerate sniffing around Horizon's assets. Nexus Flow was the crown jewel, pitched as a proprietary edge that justified a 9-figure valuation. Margaret, who'd inherited her stake from her father, was cashing out, while Victor and his buddies secured golden parachutes and cushy roles at Apex. Jake's system was their ticket to millions, and they planned to hand it to Ethan, who'd already been given top-level admin access. The kid had spent weeks studying Jake's documentation, parroting buzzwords like synergy and disruption in meetings Jake wasn't invited to. The betrayal stung, but Jake saw it for what it was: greed dressed up as progress. With 2 days left, Jake called a team huddle. "You're the best crew I've ever worked with," he said, his voice steady but warm. "Keep the faith, and don't let the suits dull your spark." Lisa teared up. Raj gave a solemn nod, and Mia hugged him. That night, Jake finalized his plan. He uploaded a Nexus Flow update with the license expiration, sent a polite email to Victor outlining his ownership of the software, and attached the 2013 email chain for good measure. Then he packed his office photos, coffee mug, a framed thank you note from Margaret, and walked out, head high. 8 days later, Horizon's factories froze. Nexus Flow's license expired, and production lines stalled. Clients screamed, deadlines slipped, and Victor's phone lit up with panic calls. Ethan, predictably, flailed. His big ideas didn't include understanding Jake's code. By noon, Apex's lawyers were on the line, threatening to pull the acquisition. Jake, sipping coffee at a local diner, got a call from Diane in HR. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight. "Name your price," Jake replied. 2 days later, he sat across from Victor and Margaret in a conference room, a new licensing agreement in hand. It recognized Jake's ownership of Nexus Flow, secured him a 7-figure payout, and included a consulting role to maintain the system for a fee, of course. Ethan was quietly reassigned to special projects, and Jake's team got raises, per his insistence. But Jake wasn't done. He took half the payout and started his own company, Flowforge, hiring Lisa, Raj, and Mia to build software that empowered small manufacturers. Flowforge's mission was simple: give underdogs the tools to compete with the big dogs. Within a year, they had clients across the Midwest, and Jake was speaking at tech conferences, sharing his story of resilience. He didn't just survive Horizon's betrayal, he thrived, proving that no one could steal his spark. Here's where the story hits a high note, folks. Jake's journey shows us that your value isn't tied to a job title or a corner office. It's in the work you do, the people you lift up, and the courage to fight for what's yours. If you're stuck in a rut, feeling like the world's passing you by, take a page from Jake's book. Build something, protect it, and don't let anyone dim your light. Want to hear more stories like this? Hit that subscribe button and join our community of dreamers and doers. We're all about breaking free from the mundane and chasing what sets your soul on fire. Now, tell me in the comments, what's one bold move you've made to take control of your future? Let's inspire each other. Jake's victory wasn't just about money, it was about owning his worth. He'd turned betrayal into opportunity, not by burning bridges, but by building better ones. Flowforge grew, and so did Jake's reputation. He mentored young coders, spoke at local schools, and even patched things up with Sarah, who admitted she'd underestimated him. Milwaukee, once a place of heartbreak, became his launchpad. And every time he fired up his laptop, he smiled, knowing he'd coded his own redemption. The story doesn't end here. Jake's still out there, writing the next chapter, proving that the only limits are the ones you accept. So, what's your next chapter? The keyboard's yours. Start typing.